Have you ever wondered which Blue Lock players would be crowned as the best out of each arc? Who was able to shine the most and was able to grab the spotlight for themselves? Is it Isagi, Rin, Nagi, or who knows, even Igarashi? Well, why don't we skip the intro and just dive right into it, starting with the introduction arc. Now here, there is pretty much only one contender. However, I want to quickly shout out Kira, as he actually got his team to nationals and dogged on Isagi's team. However, as we all know, when they came to Blue Lock, Isagi was able to just crush him. So, I mean, if Isagi was able to take him out, then I would put him as the best player of this arc. But to rank them, I would give Isagi the first place, Kira the second place, and Bachira the third one. Moving on to an arc, which is a bit harder, and it's the first selection arc. Now here I have three players in mind. Those are Isagi, Nagi, and lastly Baru. Now I have Baru and Nagi here, as both of them scored 10 goals in the whole selection, which means that they scored the most. Now why do I have Isagi here then? Well, he did actually kind of beat Nagi, and that goes back to my logic for the introduction arc, as I said that Isagi was better because he took down Kira. However, I will be honest and say that it can't be applied here, as Isagi's 2 goals, even though he did manage to beat Nagi, just aren't able to stack up against Nagi's 10 goals. This leaves both Baru and Nagi to battle for the first place. However, the winner is pretty clear. Both did have the same amount of goals. However, Nagi's team did actually manage to advance. Not to mention that he had a lot more competition in his team, because if Ryo and Zantetsu weren't in his team, then he would have scored a lot more. So with that in mind, I have to give Nagi the first place, Baru the second, and then Isagi the third place. With that said, we move on to the second selection. Now here, I also have 3 contenders, and those are Rin, Isagi, and Nagi. Now I'm pretty sure that Nagi did actually score the most goals in the second selection. However, for one simple reason, I can't put him as the best player. Now what might that reason be? Well, it is actually pretty basic. However, it is that Rin didn't choose him in the end. When Isagi's team lost to Rin in their rematch game, Rin picked the best player out of that team, who was undoubtedly Isagi. Now some of you might call this reason silly. However, I think that it makes perfect sense. But with that said, Nagi still gets the third place without any hesitation. Now we have the Titans left, which are Rin and Isagi. Now here it really gets tricky, as in their rematch match, Rin himself said that he lost to Isagi, and that it was the first time he tasted defeat since coming to Blue Lock. But even though he said that, Isagi still believes that he lost to Rin, as he lost the match. And I mean, both of them are correct in their own way, as Isagi's team lost. However, it was only due to luck. But if we look at their entire second selection as a whole, then I have to say that Rin is still the better player here, but that Isagi just managed to outread him in the end, which, yes, makes him a better player for that moment. However, throughout the whole game, Rin was still ahead of him, so I can't put him above Rin, even though he kind of surpassed him in the end. Anyway, with that said, let's recap this arc. We have Nagi in third place, Isagi in second, and Rin taking first place. With that out of the way, we then move on to the third selection arc. Here we also have a bit of the same dilemma as in the second selection. However, we get to it later. In this arc, I feel like we only have 2 true contenders, those being Shido and Rin. But before getting to those, let's talk about 2 other characters that I feel need to be talked about, those being Karasu and Isagi. First, I included Isagi, as technically in his match with Rin and Shido, he did kind of surpass them as well, as he got to the ball first and scored. After that, we have Karasu, who in that very same game was the best player after Rin. He scored 2 goals and basically shut down Isagi for almost the entire game and acted as his team's anchor and mastermind. Now, with that said, we do get some more information about Karasu, as we see that he did score 3 more goals in the third selection against other teams, and with that, his total comes out to 5 goals, which is why I will put him at the third spot of this arc. However, we are still left with 2 players, and those are Rin and Shido. Now these guys were really similar throughout this whole arc, as both of them even scored their own goal against the World 5 players, which is a serious feat. But even with that in mind, we still have a very clear winner, and that is the main man, Itoshi Rin. Now why, you may ask? As for example in the game with Isagi, Rin and Shido scored the same amount of goals, and also in their match against Team B, they also managed to score the same amount of goals. However, if we take a closer look at this arc, we can see why, as in the match where Rin and Shido played against Team Yukimiya and Nagi, Rin and Shido did end up winning with a 5-2 score. However, the only 2 goals we saw being made was by Rin. Now yes, most likely Shido scored some of the other goals, however that's not confirmed. After that, we also get to the last match in the third selection, where once again they won 5-4 against Team C. However, the only goal we did get to see was Rin's goal at the end, which means that we got to see 3 more goals from Rin. And as it is unclear how many goals Shido scored off screen, we can't take it into account, which means that Karasu gets the third place, Shido the second place, and Rin the first place once again. After that, we go directly to the U20 match, where it only gets more difficult. However, I have 3 special players in mind already, but before we get to them, I want to give an honorable mention to both Aiku and Rin. Aiku was an outstanding defender, and I can think of at least 6 shots that he did manage to save, and he was really the backbone of that whole team, but still he does fall short of the other players. Next up is Rin. Now Rin did score one of the most impressive goals in the entire match, not to mention that towards the end, when he went into his destruction mode, he was able to steamroll through their team, and he did also assist Isagi in the last goal of the match, and also tanked a full Shido kick right towards his face, and how he didn't get brain damage from that is still a mystery, but call me crazy, as I'm still going to put him here. We then jump right into the top 3 players, who I have as Shido, Sei, and Isagi. First up is Isagi, who I feel like could be reversible with Rin, so it's just what you think yourself. Anyway, Isagi got a lot of well-deserved praise in this game. Sei called him the heart of Blue Lock, and as we know gave him credit right in front of Rin in the end, not to mention that he assisted in Baru's goal, and most notably made the last and winning goal for Blue Lock, which will go down in history. So it's a bit crazy to say this, but even with all of that in mind, he still falls short to the top 2. At the number 2 spot, I have Shido, which might come as a surprise, as he did score the most goals out of anyone this game, as he got 2 goals, and while that is awesome, which is why he is at the 2nd place, it is also kind of there it ends for him, but hey, he basically gave the U20 players a fighting chance due to him being a beast. Now the best player this arc has to be, without a doubt, Sei. Firstly, he scored 1 goal himself. After that, he assisted Shido in one of his goals, not to mention that he was able to fire up the whole U20 team and made them actually try. And in the end, he went up against a fully locked-in destroyer mode Rin. I honestly don't feel I need to say more than that, as in the first half, it was basically just Sei, Aiku, and friends on the field as their team did nothing. And without Sei, I doubt that they would have even gotten 1 goal this entire game. I haven't even mentioned the pure fact that my man didn't even break a sweat this game, and he most likely gave max 20% of everything he had. With that said, my final positioning is Isagi at 3rd place, Shido at 2nd, and the winner, Sei Itoshi. We now head right into the hardest arc to decide on, and that's without any question, the Neoegoist League arc. Now you might call me crazy, and I wouldn't fully disagree with you. However, in my top 3, I don't have Kaiser, but please hear me out. Personally, for the top 3, I have Baru, Rin, and Isagi. If I did manage to count correctly, then Baru and Rin should both have 7 goals each, meaning that they are the top scorers from this arc. However, I will put down Baru to 3rd place, as I feel like he had the best and easiest environment out of him, Rin, and Isagi. He did score 7 goals, which is crazy work. However, his competition was Sendo, and outside of that, his entire team was based around him, which means that if you ask me, then he had the best chance to be able to shine, as his entire team was built for that very reason. Next up will probably be Isagi. Isagi did score the same amount of goals as Kaiser, that being 4 goals each. However, Isagi had a ton more assists, as Kaiser had 1 assist, while Isagi had 4. Now you might be like, why put Isagi above Baru since Baru has 3 more goals? Well, firstly, I feel like his assists somewhat makes up for it, and not to mention that I give him some bonus points due to his environment in Bastard Munchen, as he was in a team with one of the best under 20 strikers in the world and still managed to, I would say, outshine him. Just imagine how much Isagi could do if he had no competition and his whole team built around him. That is kind of what happened later, as Kaiser basically just had Ness to support him. But you get my point. Lastly, for the number 1 spot, it is once again Rin. Rin shared the fact that he had the most goals with Baru. He also had a super tough environment, just like Isagi, as he was battling it out with Shido. And the most important fact to why I put him first is that both Kaiser and Isagi was pretty much forced to team up to defeat Rin due to how strong he had become. And honestly, I feel like that just speaks for itself, honestly. Having the strongest team being forced to have their 2 strongest players in order to beat one player is kind of insane. But hey, that's why he is well deserved for this number 1 spot. With that, let's go over it once again, as we have Baru at the 3rd place, Isagi at the 2nd, and Rin at the 1st place. Now the next arc is actually far from finished. However, I thought that I would still go over it quickly, and as of recording this chapter, 318 is the latest. Anyway, now I'm not going to lie, but it's a bit difficult to pick a top 3 here, as Blue Lock has been on fire. However, I will put Rio at the 3rd spot due to him getting a really awesome goal and playing a flawless game until now. Second up will be Isagi, as he has completely neutralized the Nigerian team, and not to mention that he also assisted Bachira's goal. And with that said, Bachira is obviously the best player so far, as he did score his own goal, but also greatly assisted in Rio's. With all of that said, let's do a quick recap of the winners of every arc. At the first selection we had Isagi, at the second selection it was Nagi, at the second and third selections it was Rin, in the U20 game it was Sei, and then in the Neoegoist League it was once again Rin, and now in the current U20 arc it is Bachira so far. Anyway, that has been me going over all of the best players in each arc. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and let me know what video you want to see next. Also, please check out the awesome videos, which will be coming on screen right now. With that said, have a great day and bye.